Welcome everybody to another incredible Wednesday show. My goodness, last week the response, thank you.
Through the roof.
It was incredible. And as we were reading the streams, we were like, okay, is it time? Is it time? And we felt it was so important to get that information out. And it was really lucky because we pre-recorded it at a time that was very, very late at night, between 12 and 3.
The witching hour.
Yes, and we made a lot of ceremony. And we originally recorded this and was waiting for the right time. And we decided when the time was. And all the things that happened after we recorded this, up until the exact day that it was supposed to be aired, if we would have done that live, for example, we never would have been able to get this information out.
Yes.
Thing after thing after thing, from meetings to interviews.
Ooh, the resistance to be able to get to where we are right now. And in our own way, we tricked the system by doing exactly what it thought we would not do, which is be unpredictable at a moment of predictability.
I wish that every being that is starting to awaken, it's almost like the lamb being born in a beautiful field where the birds are singing and the grass is green and the flowers are smelling so beautiful and the bees are buzzing around, and you wake up to the multicoloredness of your being, the multidimensionality of your being, and it's joyful and you're filled with the love of all that is in great mystery. I wish this for everybody.
And we are at this unique moment in human history where we can continue a DNA teaching that every being out there, no matter what polarity you're in, can find the sacred neutral in this teaching and teach themselves their own sovereign unification.
And so we thought, at the beginning of the show, we thought we'd just give a quick summary of last week's show. In your words, how would you like to summarize it?
Great understanding came with that 1 hour of observation of who you are now. And in the who you are now is a knowingness that you are DNA that came from a mother and father, that came from a mother and father, that came from a mother and father before that made a lineage. And that DNA lineage may be related to or may not be related to you. It may have memories that are yours, it may not. But what it does have, technology, that your light body can bring other layers of strands of consciousness in. That's called changing your own DNA. So if you are born into a lineage that makes you a silversmith and you want to be a pop music star, you can literally change the strands of consciousness in your DNA by bringing more of your light body imprinted Akashic record into this body of now, and then take on the knowingness factor of all those other memories.
It's almost like the Matrix when they used to call up and they used to say, download whatever
Operator,
thing.
I need a
Operator, I need this. You're almost going up to operator, great mystery, great spirit, and you're saying, hey, I have this program. Let's download it. Let's activate it, because I know my heart is singing to it, so that there must be something in there that is calling that forth, that calls me to this understanding and this experience.
Program is the wrong word, but everything else you said is the right. It is literally that switch where attitude is everything, that where you go from one state to another. We all have these different strands of consciousness that come through our DNA. For those that have ever played a sport, when you get up at bat at baseball and it's your ball coming, that is a strand of knowingness because you are going to go for that ball. You with horses, when you get on a horse for a competition, it's a knowingness. And when you're off the horse, you are in a different knowingness.
Yeah.
Okay? So when you are literally changing your DNA, you are proverbially riding the horse each time to make it part of you. Because these strands of knowingness come and go. When we do great searching for soul shards and soul parts, we have to integrate these things. And we have to integrate them into our knowingness so that nothing is in competition with each other. Otherwise, the hierarchical order prevents you from being the apex of yourself. So all of those equations that you were talking about have limitations in themselves because of how much the effort the person's going to put into each strand of connectedness.
So when we look at how you've understood the DNA, we talked about solar codes, and we talked that we are all the daughters and sons of the sun, of our sun, the sun of our solar system, and that our sun holds all of our codes, and she's sending them to us. She's dancing with Father Sky and Earth Mother, and they're working in union and communion to help us grow in that. They're sending these codes out. They're bringing in equations that this world hasn't seen in how long? In
millions of years. And in some scenarios, only 12 or 15,000 years, because there's many cycles that are coming to an end here. Now, in many of the indigenous cultures here throughout Turtle Island, call this the union of grandfather sun and Father Sky.
Right.
And that's the light that is coming from the sun is coming down to us, which is our memories. Because as beings who have come to anchor here on Earth, we had to go through a spiritual process from one solar system to the next to the next. And our higher soul exists inside the sun and projects our anchorage here to create an I am presence to go through life. And that soul can also work in the astral world here. That's the multidimensional self of us. And when we came through that sun solar portal, we gave our entire universal Akashic record to that sun to hold in perpetuity of truth for when we were ready to leave the planet Earth. We would have a universal record of who we have been working with when we go on to our next trail. And what is coming to us now is our universal record in light. And we talked about how CERN turns on and off and makes a breakage in the light.
Yes.
The light is literally your own memories. For all those out there that are in the wrong DNA lineage and are ancestrally haunted as hell, get out into the light. It is your change in consciousness, and it is only an attitude change away for you to be out there in the sun, opening yourself up like photosynthesis and creating mental imagery while you're in the sun to activate your spiritual side that is going to absorb that sunlight, that will create your strands of DNA to connect to your crown chakra and to all of your other chakras so they are not in competition anymore. So many people who become channelers or do other types of high spiritual material, they connect into these strands of consciousness or other strands of consciousness from other beings connecting to them. This is just literally from your own self. More of your soul spark is coming in while you are sitting in the sun, just regenerating yourself. And it is known as density training when you do that. You are pulling yourself with dense of light so the dense of darkness cannot take over.
You know, you were sharing with me before the show some of the understandings and some of the, how would one explain it, the tactile sensations or signs of when you're beginning to integrate something. You know, sometimes it can be so faint, and you wanted to talk about the preparation so that you can fully experience it, and then how to explain how to fully integrate it at the greatest advantage to you without any kind of
Resistance.
Resistance, yes.
We all have resistance that comes from external and internal sources. And it doesn't really matter what polarity it comes in. When we want to begin to experience things, we have to understand when you're going to be integrating, you're going to be going through pathogenic warmth and pathogenic cold. Cold is when the dense energy, which can be very light energy and very dark energy simultaneously, is moving in or moving out of you. When the pathogenic warmth, that is the energy that is beginning to recycle something, is coming in. That is when the blood vessels and the conception vessel opens up to its fullest amount, so more of the soul spark is experiencing in the body. This is what triggers the parasympathetic to begin part of the soul experience. This is where knowingness strands are often misconceived or put into competition with other parts, and you get internal voices that help dissuade you from integrating something that would challenge its apex in the hierarchical order of the self.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about the parasympathetic, because I know many, many people talk about it as you do, that when you do have programs or dense frequencies or energy running through you and are stuck in your auric bands, for example, you have an entourage, they always talk about the parasympathetic being deeply invested. Like, this is our largest organ, the skin. The parasympathetic runs all the way just faintly under that and connects to our spine. And we always talk about how that is so strongly connected to the densities of some of the things that we have to face in our world and the programming that has been parasympathetically imprinted upon us. Can you go a little bit deeper into that so we can understand the resistance when we do integrate?
The parasympathetic is your empathic side, your
Right.
subconscious empathic skill, which the subconscious oftentimes learns how to use its own empathic skills to affect the conscious side.
Like your hair standing up, for example.
Hair standing up, or reacting to a food that you don't like in a particular way where people literally spit it out.
Cold sweats or stuff.
Or somebody's lighting sage and instantly somebody in the room is, I don't like that smell, it reminds me
Or
of
start
something.
sneezing uncontrollably.
Correctly.
Yes.
All of those things, the
Parasympathetic reaction.
also stores our nightmares, the energies of nightmares, as well as day terrors, frustrations and angers and wars that we've gone through. It is stored there. And that is something our society has not been taught how to let go of, the parasympathetic. So when people are going through their consciousness upgrades and meditating in the sun, you are going to have your parasympathetic side going through an exchange of pathogenic cold. It is literally going to make you cold and want to go inside out of the sun.
So this is almost, when we're talking about DNA and DNA integration, this is the DNA imprinting that we've experienced in this moment and through all of the timeline genocides and wars that this DNA technology has gone through in its evolutionary process from mother to father and so forth.
The material and consumerism of this generation too, it deeply affects the parasympathetic, because there's parasympathetic programming that we've picked up from other people.
Correct. So we have parasympathetic program, for example, from our mothers,
Correct.
from our fathers, from our experiences as a child growing up. And so this is the imprinting that has happened to us from the system. So is that part of our DNA, or is it just part of the DNA technology skin suit experience that is then just triggering the memories because it's had thousands of years trained to fear, for example?
All of that, plus the parasympathetic has access to all of your psychic skills at any moment in time.
It's your greatest tool, isn't it? That's the whole point.
And your greatest demon also. It's
yes,
it's
greatest
the
gift, greatest
the
burden.
self-haunting that we can create from it.
Right.
The poltergeist effect that comes from it. Oftentimes children who are very powerful psychics, their parasympathetic takes over and they work out the fears of others by making ghostly things happen so the mother and father come to some understanding. Or autistic children realize that they have access to their parasympathetic. They can't talk to anyone, but they can use mind control. They can use, not mind control, mind communication and etc.
So they start to basically, for example, you can use your parasympathetic to emanate pheromones. Correct. Now let's talk about those great leaders. They knew the heart-spaced brain to other brain understanding of how to align all of these facilities that we have, these gifts that we have with this technology, how would you say, the gifts of the technology or the functionalities of the technology once it's fully then been activated through the brain. What would be the best wording for that to explain that process?
Parasympathetic. literally, because we don't have one brain, we have two. We have a left and a right. And the parasympathetic is the system that tries to make two subconsciously. But we can have one consciously when we activate our sacred heart muscles through the pericardium.
And our gut and all those other parts of our brain that are actually the sacred parts, which is the main controllers of the one that is then supposed to create the holographic experience. It's not supposed to think.
So
it's supposed to work through your understanding of your feeling and your knowingness, and then
the parasympathetic also is linked to your ocular vein, so it is fully a part of this ocular experience we're happening to. It's your ears, your nose. It is also into your XY axis and your control of north, south, east, and west. Why? Because it is what's allowing you to function in this reality at an involuntary level.
When we're talking about DNA and DNA integration, this is the DNA imprinting that we've experienced in this moment and through all of the timeline genocides and wars that this DNA technology has gone through in its evolutionary process from mother to father and so forth.
The material and consumerism of this generation too, it deeply affects the parasympathetic, because there's parasympathetic programming that we've picked up from other people.
Correct. So we have parasympathetic program, for example, from our mothers,
correct,
from our fathers, from our experiences as a child growing up. And so this is the imprinting that has happened to us from the system. So is that part of our DNA, or is it just part of the DNA technology skin suit experience that is then just triggering the memories because it's had thousands of years trained to fear, for example?
All of that, plus the parasympathetic has access to all of your psychic skills at any moment in time.
It's your greatest tool, isn't it? That's the whole point.
And your greatest demon also. It's
greatest
the
gift, greatest
the
burden.
self-haunting that we can create from it.
Right.
The poltergeist effect that comes from it.
Right. So then what's happened is now we have a parasympathetic that was originally planned for that 0-point function, and now what's happened is that it's been bombarded and used to store memories that are blocking what is happening now in our planet?
It was originally intended to be a sensing, observing, involuntary system that the soul could use skill sets to be multidimensionally through. So it's your multidimensional way to entangle with the unseen world while the I am presence is still doing things, and you've got all of your other things out there doing stuff.
I've got it. So you're actually able, as a multidimensional, multifunctional being, to tactilely and have an understanding and be conscious of those understandings and experiences with your other multidimensional bodies in all the different colors, you see, because that's when we become rainbow. And that is the gift of clearing a parasympathetic right there, guys. And they've stored memories. So carry on about how
multiple personalities.
Okay.
We have a medical definition of multiple personalities where you change from one to another. Some have scars on one, and some don't have scars on the other. That is literally the power of the parasympathetic going into that poltergeist effect and literally changing it. So DNA is memory. So if a parasympathetic body begins to think it's the experience or it's the soul, it begins to think it's the soul, and to think that the soul is the parasympathetic is going to experience the soul. It's actually the other way around. We've talked about this metaphor. And the parasympathetic body will collect maybe some important experience you had from a past life or memory that has come through, and it's stuck in the parasympathetic, so you could remember it on a subconscious level and do something. Well, that strand of consciousness might just be aware that it's in your future parasympathetic.
That's right. And as you always say, we are source connected to this planet.
At all times.
At all times. And that, you know, that's a wonderful thing always to, sometimes I feel when you're going into some pretty dense things or when you're just about to go into the dream time, I say to myself, I mean, I thought for me it really resonated, but I do say it to myself, I am source connected to this planet, and I thank Earth Mother for this day, and I have a golden tube of light around me connected to source, and my dream time is guarded and protected as I come forth with my ancestors and my future ancestors. And these are things that I find very, very comforting. And now when I'm saying this, with the information that you're bringing out and the understandings and all this incredible phenomena happening all over the world, and you know, the experiences that people have been writing to us about, I mean, it's everywhere. It's so joyful. I also call forth all of my memories through that tube of golden light. So whilst I have my dream time, I can then call forth that experience when I'm walking and then awake in this technology so that it can really start to integrate it in a tactile sensation. And that's what we wanted to get into the show.
Integration.
Integration. How does it feel? What does it look like? What is it? Some different examples of the different understandings, and then how to integrate it fully so that it sits, so that the neuro pathways have been activated and the synapse is strong enough to continue beating to your heart.
Well, one of the key ways to get your left brain and right brain to work together, to be a spiritual being, is to go and do ceremony.
Yes.
And when you do ceremony in the sunlight, you activate the left and the right brain to create synapses that connect to them.
That's right.
Once we come to that basic understanding, it doesn't always have to be the fire. It just has to be that process that repeats that synaptic firing so that you can make a wave to be non-competition with yourself.
That's right. And that's why we did this equinox solstice thing. We did the first part during the equinox. We're going to do the second part during the solstice and have that ready for you. So if you want to join us in that celebration, you can. The things we've already explained in part one, as you'll see, it all is leading to this. It's all leading up to these things that you can invoke, things that you can revoke. I mean, fire
Invoke,
ceremony
revoke,
under the sun. Oh my God, by the sea. You know, there's so many different ways one can do this.
And for people out there that cannot get a fire, there are really simple ways for you to make a fire. I've had, I can't tell you how many people over the years that I've been giving advice to that they in their own mind cannot find a place to have a fire because they have never had to do it for themselves before.
Right.
And because they've never had to do it, they run into problems where they go to other people to ask if they can use their land, and they get no and no and no and no and no. I'm going to tell you right now, all you have to do is go and get a barbecue grill that has charcoal grill in it. Just like you're going to cook a steak on charcoal. They're little things, they're about 12 bucks. You put some charcoal and some twigs in there and you have a fire of your own. And if you can do that in any back porch that you can grill on, you just need to let that wood burn for 20 minutes. You'll then begin to understand why candles just don't work. Candle focus, candle magic is something totally different than the process that we're talking about here.
Yeah, and you know, the candle is more for example, the fine-tuned candle alchemy and specific different states of consciousness. When we want to actually work with the physical manifest and really release things and evoke things with the physical manifest into that tactile sensation, we need something that really has that strength. Now,
and can create pathogenic warmth to counter pathogenic cold.
So what's the difference between a wood fire, a coal fire, and a gas fire? Like, let's say we're in the urban jungle, and the only thing that we have available to us, because we're living in a high-rise, it's a big city, it's freezing cold, or you're not allowed to build a fire anywhere, it's very strict. These gas fires, how about, I mean, is that something you can look at? I mean, it's rather,
yes,
it's bigger than a candle.
If you have a gas grill, like you cook spaghetti on, there you go.
No, I mean the gas fires that people have as a heating and as decorative. You know, the ones that you just push the switch.
No, those are fine. Those are fine. Those are more than a candle, aren't they?
Well, that's what I'm asking, because that was a question that came up.
Those are 40 to 50 candles equivalent.
Right, right.
And if you look at the BTUs that it's putting out, it is putting out something that actually is going to convert the dense energy that you're putting in.
And this is really huge, because after the break, we're going to talk about the integration and how we can start to call forth these incredible frequencies and presences of our own memories coming through to us from the sun, facilitated by this gorgeous Earth Mother. So hang in there, guys. It's going to be a jam-packed session. See you soon.
I call to all spirits that exist within our solar system that are part of our time travel and understanding of quantum interaction. We ask that your higher soul come in sovereign neutral witness to our sovereign neutral witnesses here in all expressions of dimensions, time streams, galaxies, and universe. Join us on this day of balance.
Welcome everybody to part 2 of our DNA and getting deeper into the understandings. Andrew has some incredible information to now tell us. And how fast do you think this could come?
Mark my words. When that day comes that the truth is out there, you will be at a deepest layer of knowing you've ever been before. And you'll remember, after the day the truth is disclosed, you will have to sleep. And that first sleep, you look forward to. Mark these words. You look forward to that first sleep after disclosure, because you are going to wake up a different being. How close is it? It's one dream away. We can dream that dream right now. The only thing that's stopping us is what?
Our parasympathetic, our training and our belief systems. The will for us to actually go ahead and make those steps so that we have it as a physical experience and not just a philosophy.
There you go. When we actualize our DNA strands and bring them into knowingness, and we aren't in competition, all of it gets opened up.
That's right.
And we talked about how I do this skill. I made choices that there are versions of me that aren't in competition to me that do what? Help me translate this from infinite to finite. This is the I Am Presence being that's functioning with my parasympathetic in union and communion with all of my different other energy bodies that are doing what? Scanning frequencies of light and trying to translate into English a synopsis that could be millennia long that I must process and complete this process here.
So, and this is also a fascinating aspect that I'd like to get into as well. We're told that there's 80% of the DNA has the memory, and there's another 20%.
That's the light body programming.
Right. Can you explain this 80-20 understanding that, you know...
We spoke about that in the DNA show,
right.
So I'd like people to go and really look back at that DNA show. It gives a really solid explanation. 80% of your stuff, your DNA is memory. So when you look at the DNA ladder, it is memory. The other 20% is the code that unpacks that information. Of that 20%, the body, the DNA lineage you're comes with light body programming from your mother and father, their mother and father, and their mother and father before them. The last 3 generations of influence. So you could come into a lineage that has, you know, 19% of that 20% is literally the lineage has overloaded it, and only 1% of your actual light body programs come through. Therefore, you don't connect to your true skill sets.
So we have the different aspects then of photonic light actualization into the DNA technology, and the different aspects. The one is the DNA through the 3 generations. The next is the light body implantations through experience or false through programming. Either way. Then you have the other aspect, which is your actual photonic light soul's experience that has also real and false memories, dependent also on the understandings of what you took with you from that experience.
Correct. And how many lifetimes in a row
Yes.
have you had a full life review, and then unpack that life review
Right.
as an Akashic record experience.
Right, so that you are able to observe it from the point of 0-point function understanding to activate an equation that has been waiting for you in great mystery, has given you the synchronicity to
Of the
realize it.
experience. Of the experience to realize it.
Yeah.
And once you realize it, you must go on in co-creation with that actualization. This is where many people get caught up. They stop the experience right there
Right.
because they're still thinking, I got to integrate, I got to integrate. At
Yeah.
some point, you are done integrating one of those things. And yes, there's a million other things to integrate, but just understand, sometimes you have to stop integrating.
And this is really important because what happens is when you start to get, it's almost addictive sometimes.
Yes, it's very addictive. It is like a drug.
Yes.
Because you are overpowering the parasympathetic and getting chemical control back.
Now, what happens is when you start to lose that point of balance, when the euphoria has gone to such a perspective, what will happen is there's a few aspects that will show you you've perhaps gone to that path. One is that your parasympathetic will start to create triggers. It can be the clenching of the jaw, it can be stuttering, it can be you're getting ice cold at the distals of your fingertips.
Rushed heartbeat.
You are getting a rushed heartbeat. You are getting impressions of power that you think are coming from the understandings that you've just gleaned. But there was a moment that in case you wanted to engage that ego again, and the parasympathetic did start to build on a specific experience that was set there on purpose, because don't think this process has been unmarked, okay?
It's always being observed beyond
yes.
yourself. And
Yes.
there are things that are constantly trying to entangle with everyone down here at a quantum level. These are
Yeah.
these multidimensional beings that are, yes, working with the different governments through the hierarchical order of domination and control. And as I've said before, there's tens of thousands of species out there. And there is a quarantine field around our planet and a quarantine field around our solar system. So we are in a very unique point in history where your own self-observance is the greatest tool you can bring into the future.
And so the beauty of being able to gauge yourself, observe yourself, and be able to take note of yourself, that is the beginning of the multidimensionality. To actually become the observer and experience the experience at the same time, that is the beginning step. Okay. And you'll start to feel, like Andrew said, these heart palpitations, perhaps shakiness, perhaps you'll start to feel lightheaded.
Intense cold.
Yes, cannot get warm.
Oftentimes when the parasympathetic taking cold is you are cold and
Yes.
you just cannot get warm. When you have that, you have to go, parasympathetic, I am going to beat you. I'm going to put a towel in the dryer and warm myself up. I'm going to do something that makes myself warm, and I'm going to laugh you off. I'm going to do something that's not only going to make me really warm inside, but it's going to make sure that the parasympathetic is going to run away like a scalded dog.
And what I find is really, really helpful is in that moment, if you can have a fire, you sit by a bath or Epsom salt bath. But another thing is doing the revocations. And then just going slow, 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 and just pressing, like you said, the pause button. Okay. That was a really important aspect that we wanted to get into.
Yeah, when you're ice cold, get in the hot bathtub.
Yeah.
If you don't have a hot tub, get into a hot shower. If you don't have put a heater on your feet.
Yes.
Put your feet into hot water
exactly.
from a pasta bowl.
And do the invocations and revocations, and you can prepare for these things now. We've talked about it. You can prepare for these things because it is addictive. It is really, really addictive. And what happens then is that when you do the revocations and invocations, everything starts to slow down. And that's the training. That's the training to make it go pause, because once you've let that aspect go and gleaned that understanding, there is another form of power that you're encompassed with. That is the gift after that initiation of understanding. There is a gift at the end. Trust me, when you feel empowered and it is ice cold, stop, because there's something else that becomes after that. When you've recognized it, the contrast, when you've recognized it, there is a gift waiting for you. Always.
Ice cold. Again, pathogenic warmth,
Yes.
pathogenic cold. We spoke about that in the beginning here. When you begin to understand if it's cold, stop the integration. When it's warm, you can integrate it. If it's coming cold, stop it. There's a reason why. It is your parasympathetic literally taking and draining your will away.
Ice cold, that's the replacement of the will. It's not heart-based, it's not warmth.
It's not heart-based. It's not love.
Yeah.
Cannot integrate. It cannot be forced into the heart. Otherwise, the heart will once again remain broken. That is essentially giving your heart chakra away to that. And then there are other times that, you know, sometimes it's going to force integrate to the throat chakra, and stuff comes out your mouth that you never wanted to say.
Yes, but sometimes when one utters those words, there is a saying, the truth shall set you free.
Or the truth shall empower a false demon to become manifest because you just gave the parasympathetic access to your psychic skills to scare the crap out of yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's where one has to have that training, gauging what is running through your parasympathetic, what is guiding this opening of the spoken thing.
That's right.
You know, what is it? What is it? What has its tentacles inside here? And what is trying to then co-word you, as you always say? And that's where the co-wording comes in. And that's where this almost spirit, like when you drink alcohol, this almost false bravado comes through. And it's like, I shall read my invocation contracts or revocation. And you get in there and everything is tainted by a co-word. And you're so in that flow of false light technology empowerment and synapse firing. It leads you down a path, and it's ever so slight. Be very aware, and that's where the disciplines again come in, the training skills and speaking your truth to the fire, and all of those feelings that you get, because that's going to be your guide, that soul aspect.
If you don't know your own self and your own feelings, you cannot be a spiritual person.
Well, you're just unaware of the experience. I mean, it's all about the experience. So if you're unaware of the experience in any form of the 5 senses and beyond, that's the first step to then create. Can you talk to the fire? Do you feel warmth? What is it like when you're lying in the sunshine? Can you actually experience it? A lot of people lie in the sun, they feel warmth, but are they actually impregnating their understandings with it? Are they actually feeling it through the heartbeat? Are they feeling it tingling on their skin? What is the sensation? Are they sweating a lot? Are they not sweating at all? Are you hot? Are you cold? All the different understandings that come through. I mean, what would you say in that aspect as markers for people who are engaging in the activities that you've suggested?
I got a metaphor. Each and every day, you should look at how your 5 senses interact with the world around you.
Right.
Every step you take is a sense.
Right.
As well as emotion that the eyes and the ears are a part of process too. So each day I want you to consciously actively use one of your senses for a spiritual purpose. Taste, touch, smell, hearing, sight. You have given a conscious application of a sacred moment for each sense. And at the end of the day that you've done all 5 senses, what's the 6th sense? That's the impression that all 5 senses give you. That is right away training your parasympathetic that the spirit is what? There to experience. And it's the parasympathetic that gives the data of transmission for the multidimensional self to understand the experience.
And now, here's another beautiful aspect to that key, and that's a gorgeous key, is that when you are experiencing these aha moments and sensations, at the end of the day, in whatever aspect resonates with you, record it. Because the other aspect of understanding is the skill of hindsight. And that is so integral for the integration, is the hindsight, because it's in the hindsight that many, many things become clear. You have the experience and then you gain the knowledge, the understanding, and then the wisdom, which is the integration and the activation through its full conscious application.
You also can't have hindsight of an experience until the experience has a done moment or a break moment. That's
Yes.
why I say sometimes you have to stop integrating to trigger hindsight so you can see what you did so you don't make any mistakes in the future.
It's almost like, okay, we get to, we've hit the bat. We're now getting to first base. It's like, okay, wait, let's just see where all the players are standing. Let me see what's going on in the game. Let me understand the perspective.
Yes.
And as you begin to get more and more affluent, you can then strike the ball out of the stadium and you can go all the way around. But in the beginning, you first have to get to know the shapes, the form, the bases, the players. Is that a good metaphor?
That's a good metaphor. And to simplify it even left is turn it on, turn it off.
Yes.
That's
yes.
your first, most basic layer. I'm consciously using it. I'm consciously not using it.
And then there are also some fun things is when you have integrated some understandings and you are now living with these understandings in your daily creation of the holographic experience, your universe. And for example, I was standing somewhere and I recognized that it wasn't really resonating with me, but it was the perfect setting and I just didn't get it. And then I remember my father always having this comment about the specific situation and area and way of living and experience. And I recognized that it was my parasympathetic and my body that was emanating his damn judgment and energy and experience. And I just sat there, I was like, wow, it just hit me straight up. I was like, okay, I now totally call forth the court of equity. And I did that in a dialogue. And it was like I could feel this thing just lifting off me. And then I looked around and everything looked other. And I started to get the giggles. I just sat there. I was like, oh my God, I'm now having a tactile integration and sensation of the bliss and joy of the experience. There's nothing stealing it away from me. All that I worked for that creation of that moment.
Imprinted into your parasympathetic
yes.
at a young age.
Yes.
And not that your father was trying to harm you. That's just the way he was.
Yeah. It was his experience.
Every child has that.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most basic things that I tell people. Like you just said is it sticks around. And sometimes the parasympathetic, like I said, is like a bodybuilder. It has really powerful muscles in certain scenarios over you.
Yeah, and so the glory of the moment was the recognition of it. Because you see, if you can call it, you can clear it.
You can clear it.
As soon as you've seen it.
You can cancel, cure, delete it.
Yeah, and then what happens is after you've done that, and that's the addictive part, you literally get fulfilled with this blissful joy, but it's like, so gentle. Yeah, it's so gentle, and it's almost like you've got a secret.
That's right.
And it's like, I see you. And I gotcha. And I thank you because I got to see you, and I get to have that joy, the moment of the integration of that understanding. It's like, it's almost like getting a really nice piece of cake.
All right, with that, we're going to be ending the show, and I want to leave you with a visual understanding. So Natalie was just talking about cake. So I want you to imagine your favorite piece of cake, one forkful. And I want you to imagine all the taste that's in it, the sight that's behind it, the smell that's behind it. And knowing you are triggering your parasympathetic body by giving memories of scent and sight and smell. And from right there, you can use cake training to lure your parasympathetic carrot and stick.
So explain that again to me. I just to understand, because we've got all of these changes happening right now, all around us in the world. We've got volcanoes erupting. We've got specific equations also coming through earthquakes. We've got the sun doing these incredible dances. We've got, Grandfather Sky doing his thing. Oh, sorry, Grandfather Sun. We have a multitude of beings and planetary ships. I mean, we see galactic battles happening. We have people awakening and then having experiences and then, going back to sleep. I mean, there is so much happening. When you talk about the cake, Just give me a little bit more on that.
You can have your cake and eat it too, and you can have your cake and eat it before dinner. You can have your cake for breakfast. You can have your cake anytime you want. You can have your cake with green eggs and ham if you want. And you do not have to have your cake last. You can have your cake first and now. And the cake is not a lie. Why? Because we are choosing to manifest cake on a fork, to put on our tongue, to have a multidimensional experience that we can ultimately share with y'all.
So, Andrew, you know, just getting to the point, what is the most important thing from your perspective? What is the most important thing for us as individuals for this integration period?
Cleanliness at all levels, so that when you integrate, it integrates seamlessly. When you are carrying the dense energies of others, how can you integrate yourself? Whether it's you clearing out your parasympathetic, doing contract revocations, doing salt baths, you are consciously, actively becoming spiritually hygiene and aware of the energies that are in yourself and in your environment. When you take that as a conscious application of what you're taking on and what you're not taking on, you get to create a strategy of lightness around you. And once you have lightness around you, DNA strands, you just reach out and grab them. They're there waiting for you, just like teacher waiting for you in the spiritual world, because you have cleared your field enough to speak to them at an authentic truth layer that the reality cannot deny. It is a communication.
So, ergo, therefore, we get the proverbial seek and ye shall find, and when the student is ready, the teacher appears, but it comes in forms of your own memories?
Correct. When we are consciously becoming sacred in the sun, we are bringing sun energy to activate our own DNA from the sun in that solar code, so that more of ourself is here in that moment of sun. And if we choose to open our parasympathetic by acknowledging it to that sun ray, through that sun meditation, we are completing other sides of the experience. That parasympathetic is an instrument of sensing and broadcasting. It is that elemental interaction place. It is the multidimensional interface into this manifest now.
So let's say, for example, again, we have the urban jungle scenario, and instead of being, you know, because people work most of the time, and then on the weekends if the weather's not good, but they really want to take advantage. Does a solarium work? Would a solarium help you trigger memories through what it brings forth? I mean, is that one way of triggering the triple heater into perhaps a welcoming platform for an understanding to come through?
A solarium can work. The key is you need the full spectrum lighting.
Okay, so if you got full spectrum lighting,
a grow light, you can go out to any of the big shops that where you do grow tomatoes indoors. You can get a big sodium hydride light, or a big LED light that's got, you know, 13,000 lumens or 10,000 lumens or something crazy like that. And they're only about 40 or 50 bucks. And you put it up there, and that will trigger everything that your parasympathetic goes in the subconscious awareness that all forms of light are there for you.
So here's something maybe fun that one can endeavor to do. You have your revocations, you have your invocations. Now you're living in the urban jungle, so you get your little grill, or you have your gas fire if it's an apartment, for example, where you don't have a balcony or can open windows.
Or if you don't even have a gas fire, you got a grill, you put a big pot of water on there, and you have what?
There you go.
Water and fire in perfect metal alchemy. I cannot begin to stress, you must be able to think in redneck terms sometimes if you can't have fire. If you can't have fire, if you have a heat plate and it's no out fire, but it warms up that water to boiling, you still have that elemental fire there. And that can be your sacred portal into telling your story to that water, which you are going to program, and then do what with? Your choice at that moment of alchemy.
Well, there's a multitude of things. You can actually use it then to cook a pasta and have that invocation of the program water. You could then freeze it. You talk often about ice alchemy.
Ice alchemy, that's right.
Yeah. And then perhaps after one has done those invocation revocations by the fire with the ancestors, one can then...
Or by the pot of water.
Or, yes, by the pot of water. Then one can do an invocation revocation and say it begins now, just before they're about to step into that solarium.
Yep.
And then whilst they're in the solarium, do the same thing and start to become really, really aware of what's happening to their tactile senses, the things that are drifting through their mind as they begin to call forth these words and understandings. And then afterwards saying it is complete, so that when you do, in case have to go through the city, that you're not open when you're going out amongst the crowd.
You turn it off when you're done.
That's so important, isn't it?
Because your parasympathetic thinks it wants to always be on. So once you consciously engage the parasympathetic to be a part of your consciousness strand in non-competition, to absorb this energy in equal co-creation, when you're done, you must tell it to go back to its normal programming, knowing full well it may do something that counters you later, but at least you have stopped its access to that energy so that it can't be used against you in some other form of subconscious game that could be from whispers to making you slightly out of balance and you bump into someone just a little accidentally.
And then you have a physical quantum entanglement,
exactly.
Yes. A jump.
A jump.
Indeed. And you know, when we start to engage these things, there are a multiple amount of things that can help ease the integration, help open up the integration, and then also perhaps help filter a knowingness of what you are willing to accept?
I'll be blunt.
Okay.
You need to start studying. Pick up a book on Chinese medicine. Pick up and look at what the energy meridians are. And look at the images in those books and apply them to yourself. Integration means it is the body that is going to be integrating the experience, and you're going to be witnessing it in all of its ups and its downs. Therefore, the more aware you are of anatomy and physiology and the spiritual mechanics behind anatomy and physiology, the easier you can integrate or determine if something is not integratable because it is too dirty at the gallbladder level, or you are just not gallbladder clean enough to take that thing in that is a resolution of energy that is only in the gallbladder meridian.
Right.
Okay?
And then, you know, applying perhaps then those I mean, a lot of people really, really don't like needles. I mean, I myself included. I mean, really, I just can't. So for those of us, there are other aspects we can use to activate those points. One is moxibustion. One is acupressure. You can actually take a copper rod and you can start to play around with it. And the copper rod, you know, you can actually buy those in a lot of stores. They don't cost much. And you can start, or you can actually use a crystal as well. Whatever resonates with you.
Okay. So when it comes to becoming aware, you are going to pick up those books and begin to study them so that the body starts to learn about itself.
Right.
That's another layer of deeper integration. When you are studying, you are telling the body it is coming for a new experience, and the parasympathetic programs have to stick up. Okay, new experience coming, I must judge that experience. You are going to take that judging away from the parasympathetic and give it the knowledge of the body, which will confuse it for quite some time so you can integrate something with ease. Sometimes we must confuse the parasympathetic by giving it a task that will take it a long time to do so we can integrate something without having the whispers of discontent coming through.
Right. So can you give us a few like signs of when one can not gauge, but you know, when one is beginning the experience, and there are signs, there are triggers, there are common denominators, as we explained before, that when one starts to integrate specific types of strands, and some of the things some of the common denominators that come up.
Yawning, heavy-duty yawning.
Okay.
That means a consciousness strand is saying, you need dream space, and I want to integrate in dream space. So if you have those heavily yawny moments that come out of nowhere, that is a shard saying, I'm ready to integrate. But the body isn't at that moment right there.
Right.
So once we determine that yawn means something, we have to integrate right away. That means we have to separate ourselves from what's doing and close the mind down and at least try to enter the theta state, which is that just pre-state before you're in dream, where the mind wavelength is really low, and then that shard will either create warmth or cold in your body. If it's cold, you stop that integration right now because it is trying to bring denser energy that you are not ready for. If it is warm energy, you're going to want to integrate that energy.
So when one has experienced this, one, for example, can say, I am source connected to this planet. I call forth the ancestors and the spiritual court of equity. Come and bear witness as I endeavor to integrate this specific part of my soul spark. Please come and seek remedy and resolve, for this can only be a joyful, blissful understanding and integration. Anything else must go to the spiritual court of equity for remedy and resolve.
There's always that technique.
Okay.
And the other technique is where you're just going to go, is it warm or cold?
Right.
Because you never know when it's going to try to integrate.
Right.
When you're out there journeying and you find a part of yourself that's ancient and you come back from that dream journey, sometimes it can take several weeks, months, or years to integrate a soul shard. I have met people that have had a soul shard stuck in their, trying to integrate in their body for 30, 40, 50, 60 years even. That's how confused people can get.
So can you just explain, explain those different strands, because it's so key.
That's kind of a big statement. So instead of calling them strands, for this we're going to use a little bit different of metaphor.
Okay.
Let's say you're going through a healing and you've got a family member that's passed on. And you connect to memories of your older self, of your younger self, before that person passed on. And that's called the grieving process, where different parts of yourself come through. At times you can get caught in that grieving, and that younger version of yourself will enter your parasympathetic again. That is an example of self-mourning and haunting.
Right.
If that child was really haunted at that young age, the echo of the ghost will come through that mourning process also. These are extreme examples of people that go into great grieving. There is an example of parasympathetic grieving that can't stop because it's now feeding on itself from a younger age. When we want to begin to eliminate that, we must go in non-competition. And the only way to get into non-competition is to allow yourself to change the attitude of integration to the attitude of pause. And once you put on pause and you're consciously, actively saying, I no longer need to integrate this stuff, you get a moment to question, what am I going to integrate? This is where you say, that which is not serving me best at this moment, I release back and I cut the strands of consciousness in a form of love so that when it does return, I may be better to integrate it then. We must limit ourselves when we're integrating, because if we over-integrate, we get trapped in the biggest soul trap of ever, bringing in something that was not meant to be.
False power.
And losing decades of life.
Yes, you see, that's
false power.
That's another prime example, and we know we're going to get into that in a minute. Just hold that thought on the false power. Now there's the other parts of integration. That was the first part, and then we have the other parts and how that affects us.
To create language of the other part. So let's say you're learning that you want to have something more in your life, and you're trying to actively learn something new. That is, you're saying to your parasympathetic body and to your sympathetic body, I am in a learning mode. And then you find yourself each day not learning, watching more television. Okay? That is the being aware of how much control the subconscious has over you, or how much power you've given away to the programs that run, the ones that determine how much energy you have each day. Then you must make a conscious strategy to counter those programs at each moment as an I am presence, so you can begin to integrate creativity at its most basic level. And then from its most basic level, you can achieve the highest level of it, which is being blissfully creative.
And that's the next part. And this next part, this next part is really interesting and it's really cool. And we're going to cover these parts individually to a lot more depth. But the next part is the fun part. The next part is when you've done some ceremony, in whatever manner it may be, praying before you go to sleep, calling it forth, daydreaming, walking it out and talking, walking your talk and talking your walk. There's an infinite amount of ways how you can be calling these, glorious times forth and understandings and activations. And sometimes you'll get triggers. You'll get a smell. And all of a sudden, you're going to remember a moment. You're going to remember a moment, or you're going to hear a song and you're going to remember a moment. A moment this time so much more in its experience full from tactile sensations that you're almost viscerally living that moment in this ancient future now.
Everyone's got a favorite song that triggers them into something happy. If that is the first teaching of the parasympathetic, that how you can get it to work for you again.
Yes.
So when we give ourselves those tactile moments because we are aware of what triggers us into goodness, we can easily let go of the dense energy once again because we have the knowingness to put the song on that does what we need, followed up by the comfort food, followed up by doing whatever it does that counters that cold energy.
And now here's the clue. Here's the clue, guys. When this starts to happen, you might get the opportunity to again, with all the knowingness and understanding you have years later, be in that exact moment, view it again with all these understandings.
Hindsight.
And you'll find yourself with a feeling. And depending on whatever hindsight that gives you, an understanding comes, a remembering comes, a knowingness comes, and you can start to feel it emanate inside your soul. One of the great things to do when these understandings come is to allow them to their completion. And then as soon as you've allowed them to their completion, have patience, make notes. Actually make notes, and then let those notes go for a while, and then come back to them. And that's what you were talking about when it takes the time to fully tactilely integrate it. And what will happen is other things will start to come once you begin that process. That's one of the glorious parts.
I have a metaphor. Many people have learned to ride a bike. So here's a learning to ride the bike metaphor.
Exactly.
When it comes to consciousness
this is so
strands.
beautiful, yes.
So you learn to ride a bike, and a lot of times your mother and father's out there and they put training wheels on. So you got the training wheels on, you're riding around, you feel all safe, you take the training wheels off, you fall a couple times, and you ride the bike all the way until you're a teenager and you don't want to ride the bike anymore because you got a car. The car's got gas, and all of a sudden, 5 years later, you don't got enough gas money. You say, I'm going to get on my bike and go see my friends. And you get on your bike. Do you need training wheels? Most people don't need training wheels. As soon as they get on, they're going to remember it because they're back into a strand of knowingness of balance. But in consciousness exploration, when we integrate stuff, oftentimes we put training wheels on our integration. We put training wheels on a consciousness strand, and that's not the right thing to do. When you put the training wheels on it, you limit it because you are saying, I can only have this scope of experience. I cannot go out of this scope of experience.
Now, one thing that will help you with that is actually the revocation contracts.
That's right.
Sure thing. Revocation contracts, and then also...
the key is why revocation? Because you are setting the ground for sacred space so that when you're integrating, that whatever goes through your mind, mental whispers that makes the final equation so that you come into oh, I get it, the big aha moment. And then sometimes you have 5 or 6 aha moments, and the next day you're like, what do I do now? I just had these aha moments. Then that's the next journey, and the next journey, and the next journey into consciousness, so that consciousness strands connect at multiple times to not only give you aha moments, but aha years, aha months.
Those aha moments, once they've become, it's almost like the pill thing in the Matrix.
Exactly.
Once you've taken it, you can't go back because it's a memory which has now been remembered. It is already part of you.
I have something important. I've always said that memories are stored in photonic light.
There you go.
But in the parasympathetic, they're not photonic light. They are your active memory before you've gone to sleep. But the parasympathetic doesn't clear out active memory unless you actively clear it out. So everything that we've done every day is now stored in our parasympathetic. That is why we retain dense energy. That is why we literally exchange the dirty energy underwear. The abuse of the parasympathetic by our material and consumer culture that has labeled us slaves to the society, labeled us slaves to the dollar bill, labeled us slaves to the labeling of who you can be, and values you something that you will never be able to outreach. Therefore, your creativity is taken right at your parasympathetic level, the biggest organ in our body, this sensing thing that we are.
That's quite interesting because that That reminds me of some scientific experiments they did with people and also with plants, because plants feel here, everything does. I mean, once you're connected, everything's connected to each other's vibrations. And they found that the children, where the parents always said, you know what, you're no good. You know, you really suck. Can't you do any better? Those people actually, most of the time, just broke down because they were so programmed to be exactly what their parents told them they're going to be through that. And then you had the other ones that were, you're amazing, you're infinite, you can make it. And these people actually then started to emanate that. It was the programming again and again. It's the same concept, isn't it?
On many levels, this concept it is directly translated to, yes, it works for that reason. But there's so much to understand how the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic. We have a left brain and a right brain. We have a conscious and a subconscious. We have a higher soul. We have the inside dreaming body. All of those different things are doing things, and the parasympathetic is supposed to be the medium in which we can sense and interact with all of them.
To walk in between the different worlds,
yes,
in union.
But it is not that task for that purpose in any way currently right now.
But that was its 0 point.
That was its 0 point function,
okay,
yes.
cool, yeah.
And when we begin to describe different ways to clear out the parasympathetic, we have to, well, once it's clear, you have to put new programs in. Otherwise, there is a vacuum there, because the parasympathetic has been given an idea, you are this full. When you reduce it down to there, it's going to want to fill back up, and want to fill back up with what? Life force energy. So it has its own bank account also. This is where entities will come and drain you at your parasympathetic level. So when those people feel like the energy has just come out of their pockets and there's nothing left, that's because your parasympathetic's been drained.
Now, the other part of it is once one has begun the process and has these understandings, is that when you actually start to begin consciously engaging yourself in sessions of, let's say, integration, people are finding more and more that these integrations, some of them are just so sugar sweet that you just start giggling.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden things get released because you see something in a light that is so multidimensional and you look at it and you're like, wow.
Wow,
exactly.
You
know, you
get
got
that
me.
Wow, aha,
yeah.
Wow, aha, wow moment.
And you know, you giggle and all of a sudden those energy banks that weren't available to you, even though you created the experience, but the experience, and that's all that is real in this aspect from an energetic understanding, is the actual experience.
Right.
That experience has been fed off and captured and being held somewhere else and being used by something else. You don't have that rainbow. You're stuck as the red part in the rainbow, where you should have had the rainbow experience.
Yeah, you're just the brown rainbow instead of the full color rainbow.
Yes. So what happens is you start to see all the colors, and you start to see also the understanding, because as the veils lift, as the understandings come, the veils lift, because what you're now seeing is with an eye that is following through a heart aspect, not a training of the mind.
So if you have a negative Nick or a melancholy Molly out there.
Melancholy Molly, yeah.
Okay, all those are a label, but when you have that, you have to realize that that strand is there for a reason. Each being, the negative Nicks, that's their expression. The melancholy Mollies, that's their expression. We can't judge them, but what we can do is give them tools so that they don't have to have a label before their name.
That's right. Now, coming up in part 3, what we're going to do is we're going to go through some experiences. You know, Andrew has been helping so many people in these times, and there are just so many beautiful stories about how he's helped people integrate specific parts of themselves. And, you know, what I'm going to get Kat to do is I'm going to get Kat once again to play that one radio show where you help that lady integrate her soul shard with light language. That one shard that was stuck so many thousands of centuries ago, and it took all this time. I want to get that into the next show, because, or as a link to this show, perhaps, you know, because I'm telling you, that is a really, really good example of how powerful this experience can be. And we also have that light language series where you don't need to buy the whole thing. You can just buy specific sections that resonate with you and play around with it, because you never know what that might help you trigger. You'll never know what kind of a remembrance this might bring to you. And that's something that we're going to be covering more in depth also on our LCE session this Saturday.
For people that want to go from, you know, basic 101 spirituality to being intermediate, light language is one of those ways to go, because it assists you in many avenues of integrating all different layers of knowingness, because you are giving your voice the 0-point function of a resolution of energy that the spirit cannot solve, but in yataka chinewa ti tataka, it has been solved here in this reality, because I've just involved the whole entireness of my being in that yitakacha part, so that whatever was manifested through that here in the now means something else to all of that. But this is the I Am Presence being that has completed it through knowingness, not in competition with anything else. So the art of light language is taking that non-competition to everything else and allowing yourself being the medium that solves the equation. The spirits cannot figure out how to get you to do it, and just go matiyata. Just could be that what that needs for that higher thing to go, oh wow, you know, since I'm not in the body, that was all I needed to do, but I spent 1,000 eons going through all the possible equations. I didn't think all you do is pick up the crystal and go da-da. Yeah, they do get caught into these macro to micro expressions, and sometimes just giving it voice in the now gives it all the definition it ever needs. Hota yatata hacha, kamupa yita, hochana, kachawata, shimonata, jekota, imananaka, wacha chamata, chikana, hoch, chana, shimonaka, autika, shomohotoka, chawanati, cheko, chanatu, ashna, uki, yeteta, chumahata, ishmana, chamoka, hatachimo, winjinahacha, chawina, chinahachawata, shawakiya, ush, ata, ush, yete, ho, yayaka chamo, kamja, shamota, sheta, hatu, katomachehecha, che motecheki, nanaku, chanakawata, chakawa, chiteha, shashiyana, wa, yikecha, washna, momata, yanata. And we are at this unique moment in human history where we can continue a DNA teaching that every being out there, no matter what polarity you're in, can find the sacred neutral in this teaching and teach themselves their own sovereign unification.
That's really strange. So what is happening right now is as Andrew is starting to bring through these understandings in the recordings, we've now hit the time of about 3:30 in the a.m., a little bit past 3:30 in the a.m. And as he brought these understandings forward, there was a gift coming to him. And as soon as he finished uttering a sequence of sentences and we took a rest, he started integrating. And Kat would like to film that, so we're going to zoom in on Andrew whilst he's doing an integration and just take this moment. I'll just describe how it feels in here right now. It's very still, and it's cold, but it's not cold. It's a rather nouveau experience of the words that are coming through. So, Kat, you're gonna bring it close up, and Andrew can talk himself through this right now.
What's going through now is, this is a tool that I've made, one that's been nicknamed the Ass Kicker. I chose this tool for a particular reason. Today was a battle for me today. My grandmother had died on Friday, 97 years old, Peggy Rizos. Love you to death. And so I've been going through the mourning process. And in that mourning process, I've discovered that there are other things within my parasympathetic and outside of that that would want to use that energies against me. And it was this sudden moment during my integration process of what I just said, of I realized that something else was trying to abuse the being that is me. And I consciously took an efforted moment where I picked up this tool and I said, you are not going to abuse my mourning energies against me. And I gave it a litany of things for it to understand at the most highest expression of the multidimensional self that is me, so that myself can't be abused by some of the most simple things that we go through each day. And for holding this tool that's integrating with the energy, it is helping release a tremendous jaw stress that I've been going through. I was pulling the energies up and down from my jaw. It was like retched into my jaw, trying to create this feeling so I wouldn't go forth with any other words. That's how dense the energy came for me. It densed up my shoulders and my calves, to the point where I was aware that something was trying to project onto me, to limit me, to stop the creation and co-creation that was going on here. And now I've taken its power away. And in fact, I'm talking about it on a show. And talking about it takes it away from its power at a very, very strong level. Because now there's not just the witnesses here, there's tens of thousands, going to be millions of witnesses at the power we're taking away from the being that likes to abuse people that it's mourning on, when they're in mourning.
So, Andrew, whilst you're living this experience, tactile sensations, could one of those be flashbacks to memories of deep sadness or trigger deep sadness in you, and then through that a kind of slight impregnating on things? Is that how it came on? Or I mean, how did you get flashbacks of memories, or how did it begin?
It began a while ago when we first sat down and there were some flowers on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was very young, when my grandfather had died, I remember the sickening smell of flowers everywhere.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever gone to a funeral. There's so many flowers that it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I just the smell of flowers, that's what it used as a parasympathetic trigger to bring on the mourning of a kid that didn't understand what was going on at that time.
Tactile memory of the olfactory sensation triggered then to a specific coordinate in time where something was severely feeding off you, knowing that it would come to this point in time, and was just waiting yet again to emanate that, to restrict a specific understanding to be called forth in this moment of now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It used my memories of mourning my grandfather and going to the funeral home, into the church, and there being so many flowers that it overwhelmed my tactile sensation and my scent, and that's all I could take in was this mourning energy, not of myself, but everyone in the church.
So is that why it started to feel so cold in here?
Yeah, it was, again, that childhood memory and all the empathic energies that are connected to it, and like literally like a poltergeist energy coming through and creating dense energy in my body and emanating it through this room.
I could feel it.
Yeah. So I made a conscious choice to pick up this tool and go, no, I will not let you do that. Even during my times of mourning, I must be consciously aware of what's going on, because if I don't, I get caught up into the games of beings that don't want us to succeed. Every day that could happen to me, and every day I make a conscious choice to come back to the sacred neutral, because if I don't, I'll end up in polarity and once again fall back asleep like the sheeple out there. Staying awake is a task, but it does not have to be a difficult one. When you know what is you and you know what is not you, you cannot look a blind eye to that anymore. You must take awareness of yourself. Because if you don't, you are going to get stuck into the trails of the self that lead you into the pain, the mourning, the destruction, the hatred, the jealousy, the envy, the deceit that the self creates. And then the self whispers take over, and the next thing you know, it's months and months before you got yourself back.
So to psychically combat that, because there were other sensations that you were describing as well. You were getting the olfactory sensation was then triggering a imagery snapshot of that moment to imprint it more.
Me that did not have control over his psychic skills, that was literally creating a parasympathetic poltergeist reaction in the now.
And so the psychic internal imaging of the conquering was then to relay all the good memories that you had access to the energy of that experience.
That's right.
So those then call it up. And then a good part of training is that, and this is something that actually that I did, which really, really helped me, because a lot of us growing up, we've created these things, and we only start to glean and understand them now as you know, we get to that aspect of many people passing. And what you're looking at here is how to start to focus on all of the good things you can remember. A lot of the time we always remember the worst things. Endeavor to have a host of incredibly good memories where you have access to that feel-good thing, as well as maybe use some sensory or tactile triggers like we were talking before, because when that comes, that is part of your training that will automatically come in as soon as you have that awareness. And is that what you were practicing at that moment?
Yeah. Consciously doing it at this moment to be more present now, to not just do the spiritual courts of equity, but to connect my heart space to the energies that were going on, and immediately find resolve to it, not justice or judgment, to not put it back in the polarity. And I understand that this being who I am, sometimes this is just an endurance game, and this is one of those things. There are some not nice beings out there, we know that. And being in a public figure, I have to be more consciously aware of that.
So when you are, for example, with a group of individuals, so you're working with really high frequency individuals, or you're in the healing perspective, or you're at a ceremony, and something like this occurs and you are aware of it. For example, let's take the scenario, I'm sitting here with Andrew and he's going through this experience. This can also be an opportunity for you as well to download an understanding. And for me, it was like I noticed all of a sudden it got very cold, and something was endeavoring to trigger my heartbeat to go faster. And so what I did is I went to a giggly memory, and I held that and I focused on my heartbeat. And all I did was focus on my heartbeat and be almost airy-fairy in my thought process, so that my mind was very, very clear and light and was just focused on my heartbeat. And I activated my triple heater in my body so that I could activate my hands and my distals so that they became warm. And as I did that, I started to get understandings of what was happening. I was able to then observe and disentangle to see that this was a process. This was a gift. And to be able to observe such a thing and then be able to recognize it and then gain experience through seeing such a master adept as Andrew handle the situation gave me and myself an understanding, because all I could do was go into my heart and feel its heartbeat and know that all is okay. Mm-hmm. Even though it was really, really, really cold, I was just like, hey, activate the triple heater, here we go. This is going to be funky, this is groovy, we're in the witching hour right now.
Practice what you preach. And that's what this moment was for me.
And it's still happening. And
that you noticed it's warmed up quite significantly.
It was as soon as you spoke it out loud and the effects of that understanding, it was all of a sudden it got lighter, and it actually felt like everything became rather golden in the atoms in the air. Hmm. I don't know how else to explain it.
And what I'm endeavoring to do right now is to fortify my reality in all dimensions, time streets, galaxies, and universe, not through revocation, simply by creating a golden protection of bubble around me in many layers. And I'm just using this tool to assist the prisms and colors and frequencies to make sure that is a solidified bubble of protection around me, because I understand that this is going to be an endurance battle. We are reaching some of the crazy times in our world where beings are targeted, and sometimes you just got to wait them out, and other times you got to beat them down. But for me, this is not a put the war paint on and go on and take care of this, because it's too subtle to go direct to war.
Well, and this is really interesting, the experience, because it's the aspect of understanding. It's the observance, the understanding of the observance, and then the strategy. The strategy is key. And what Andrew is, I mean, this example, this gift that we're getting right now from his ancestors, from his grandmother that has just passed, this is such a glorious gift. We're able to share this, is that it's incredible. I mean, really, it's such a glorious gift, is that we're able to see what he's emanating, and we're able to go through the experience with him, and he is able to talk us through it at the same time, but still remain in that sacred, neutral aspect of looking. And is there a sadness there? Yes, but it's a recognition of the sadness rather than the experience of the chemical sadness. This is the key. That's the fine understanding. That's the glimmering of the veil, you know, starting to lift and going through that twilight aspect to the absolute clarity of knowingness of contrast, of the contrast. And if you notice with Andrew, whilst he's speaking to us, if you've noticed, it's almost like he's slurring. His lips are moving slowly and his tongue is heavy, because a parasympathetic is endeavoring to impregnate something where he is fully, clearly understanding what the DNA technology is going through. And it's quite the experience to explain this whilst it's happening. It's almost like I don't know how this is coming out, but it's really beautiful to see, because as you see how you're conquering that by just being in that sacred neutral, not overreacting, but just understanding the process and then going through it with the wisdom that you already have of knowingness of this experience and what it actually depicts, and the glory and the gift of it, the actual gift of it, and how to integrate it and emulate it at the moment exact of understanding and teaching, so that perhaps others may glean something from it without fear.
Without fear. Fear drives so many people forward in this world. It's what keeps their hologram moving. When you take fear out of your hologram, you have limitless amounts of energy. And we live in a world of physical and non-physical coming together in a very unique moment in space-time. Our whole species is going through awakening, and there are those that are at the front of the awakening, the leading edge. And guess what? The leading edge has the greatest amount of wind going against them. What we've discovered about our audience is they are some vastly superior students compared to what they were a year ago. That people have paid attention over a very long period of time. And we have gotten great notice by the energy beings that are out there that we are creating and helping people awaken and helping other people awaken through our 1 degree of separation awareness. And what I'm going through now, there are thousands of others that are going through this at the same time. We're just reaching a point where the apparatus of domination and control is functioning at its peak point right now against us. And it's going to break down. And once it breaks down, people are going to go through these reactions that I'm going through right now. Why? Because your parasympathetic is what gave the system of domination control power in the first place. It's what agrees to all of these tacit concerned spiritual contracts when the system has to ask you every time, can it use your energy? And it's the parasympathetic that's giving you the yes instead of the I am presence. And once the apparatus begins to break down, and we're going to look at the house of cards that the parasympathetic has created around us and the network of haunted beings that it may be working with. And we're going to tell it no. And we're going to retask its purpose and take away its dense energy and replace it with light and give it back to its 0-point purpose, which is to be a multidimensional facet of communication. It's the instrument of understanding from multidimensional perspectives. It's what's going to give us the capabilities to bilocate or trilocate or quadlocate.
You know, it's almost, you've just explained it so eloquently that our technology is at this moment in its functionality backwards to its true authentic 0-point function, which is to come through the heart to the brain, to the main mechanism then of the brain that then emanates that hologram, parasympathetic emanating that to increase then the experience of that hologram and its understanding. What we've got is we've got a impregnation and imprinting of the parasympathetic through generations, propaganda, imprint through various technologies, forms, frequencies, sight, smell, etc., etc. And it's been made backwards. So that's the triple-edged sword, as we say, you know?
So your side, their side, and the truth.
Right, and that's then...
the three edges to the sword.
That's then connecting the heart and then starting to... This is the labyrinth, here we go. Starting to let your heart and its understandings through the practices that you're engaging, let it become your gauge. As Andrew said, it's that simple, cold or hot. It is that simple. That's the first step to the awareness, and then becoming more adept. And then, as Andrew says, he's done the preparation, he's done the ceremonies, he can understand the integration, what is happening at this moment. And it is a gift, it is an integration. It's got some icky aspects to it. It's got an icky aspect which has been foreseen.
I'll be blatantly, brutally honest. If I don't do 15 hours of ceremony a week, you don't get a galactic historian. There won't be shows. There won't be me doing readings, because that's what it takes to function at this level. That's reduced where I used to do many more hours of ceremony, but I've learned how to be disciplined with my ceremonies to make them very effective, and how to turn on the sacred energy instantly by picking up a sacred object and by going into its frequency field and going through the very process of reintegrating my spiritual armor, going back to the connections of the golden tube, making sure nothing is attached to my energy field or that I have attached the energy field of something else. To begin to remove the energy of this day from the Akashic experience that I'm going through, so that this false light concept that's trying to project on me can't have an anchorage in my space-time. I'm doing unique things on my other energy body level by actually doing a psychic surgery to my actual reality right now, past, present, and future. To me, does this feel like a timeline attack? No, but it can probably easily lead into that, because there's a moment of mourning in me, and this is a moment where the system says, react, react, he's in mourning, throw whatever he can throw at him. And now I'm choosing consciously to respond to the system that it has no angle in me, has no dimension, no time stream, and I will manifest directly in front of it on this television station, on my own frequency, and it cannot stop me. Period. I am the apex of this hierarchical order, not you. And in this I am moment, I'm choosing to acknowledge all of those things that are out there, because I know of what's coming. I know of the global dream time. I know about people awakening. I know about the little thing that everyone can hold in their hand and there never need to be an exchange for value system ever again. I know what the children are going to see next month, next year, even tomorrow. It's a matter of translating into English so people that can hear it, process it, understand it, and then do something with it. Right now, I'm doing something with it. I'm consciously fighting the system of domination and control for every other person that's ever been in mourning and it wanted to abuse you. That's what I'm doing with this tool right now. I am impressing this world at the global dreamtime level that any being abusing another being during its mourning process, that the angels of the highest light come to those individual beings being affected in the mourning process, and that being be removed in all dimension, time streams, galaxy, and universe from this planet forever. That's unity. Stop abusing the mourning. It's one of our great gifts is to mourn the passing of the dead. And for those beings that use it and abuse it, your time is done. Get off our planet.
Oma, it is I, Natalie. I love you so very, very much, and I honor and treasure all that you have taught me in this lifetime. I am here with you, and I'm also there with you on the other side. Do not be afraid. This is a process of great beauty. Let go. It's okay to let go. Your prayers have been said, and your transition is filled with the glory of God and all that is. There is nothing to forgive, Oma. Remember, you are light. Remember that you are love incarnate. Do not be afraid. Be in peace. Let go. Your soul family awaits you with great celebration and infinite love for the being that you are. Go in peace, knowing you are infinitely loved. It is okay now to let go. We love you. I love you. See you soon, Oma. You are a beautiful being of light. I am here to help you. Relax, Oma. Listen to my words, and if you can see me, try to see me. Try to see me on that screen. You are not the body. You are a being of infinite light, with a soul family and ancestors that have watched your journey since the day you were born, and even now. You are not alone. This life journey and your experience was not an easy one for you, but you created great triumph through great strife. The things that you have brought through this world and to this world have changed this world for the better. You leave a legacy behind. It is a job well done. I am now going to speak some words, Oma. In your time, this was known as a prayer. I know you cannot speak, so I, as the last soul blood relative of this DNA lineage direct, that we were both born into, will speak on your behalf. I have received permission from you, and I ask again in this ancient future moment of now, for your soul's permission to continue and speak these words now out loud in this dimension for all kind to hear. I ask you now, Oma Kobi, may I speak on your higher self's behalf? Thank you. This is a revocation invocation prayer for the process of transition. I, in this ancient future, transitional process moment of now, call to all spiritual contracts that exist within my past, present, and future being selves and existences in this dimension and time stream, and all dimensions, time streams, above and below the Earth-centric sine wave of coexistence, and within all realms of the galactic central sun, and within all universes. At this exact moment, in the ever-present co-creating moment, I summon all true DNA lineage ancestors and all true light body lineage ancestors to create a unified, proper spiritual court of equity, so I may create a no-time transition process field in unity consciousness to which I, the apex I am presence, and all my beings, selves, and existences in this and all time streams, dimensions, and universes may come to remember, experience, and express their full, multidimensional sovereignty. I call to Earth Mother and all her light denizens within all inner and outer space, and to all primary ancestor spirits of Earth, to come forward and occupy the spiritual court of equity. I summon the solar beings and all solar light denizens within all inner and outer space. I summon the galactic central sun, the galactic central council, and all its light denizens within all inner and outer space to come forward and occupy this spiritual court of equity. O great mystery, who is the source of all power, I call to you. Come with your sacred synchronicity, so all beings may hold space with unity consciousness. I call forth this proper spiritual court of equity of transition to create and hold space in no time as a place where I and all sentient kind may come to regain, remember, and recreate their full, sovereign, multidimensional expression and experience filled with bliss and joy. I am a multidimensional being first. My experience is as a multidimensional being first. I call forth that the truth of this remembrance be shown to me in my process, and the path free and welcoming for my return to the other planes and dimensions of existence in exultance and joy. The systems of domination and control no longer define, circumscribe, or restrict my 3D experience. I reject all limitations imposed on humanity by religious, political, social, and all other belief systems that have been created and maintained for hundreds and thousands of years by the systems of domination and control. From this moment on, I no longer accept this prison for the mind, soul, and DNA skin suit. I am free. I call upon all of the angelics with the highest frequency qualifications for this process to hold space for this I am presence's transition process. I call upon this spiritual court of equity and all the ancestors to honor this reading of my free will and enter it into the earth, galactic, and universal Akashic records. I, as the apex of this I am presence, am now in this ancient future moment of transition complete. Namaste. Now, Earth Mother is really showing some significant changes, and you know, when the first volcano went off, and you'd said before that we'd get some big shifts. And when the first volcano went off, and then we had all of these earthquakes and everything, you were explaining that that was Earth Mother allowing new and specific frequencies into this aspect of this
that weren't allowed before, weren't predicted before.
Yes.
When you have a volcano that releases energy, that means a process that was not predicted, not prepared for, not geoengineering prepared or de-prepared for. The system gets to do something that it couldn't do before because the control system prevented it. So as the volcano erupted, and then we had the earthquake in Nepal, and then you've had earthquakes all over the United States and all over the world that have, how do I put this, shown the system that's controlling the Earth geocrustal control that it has no power over it anymore. That the Earth itself is beginning to expand and define its own rules and its own expression. and that the sacred geometry technology that's over certain areas is going to get knocked down. And then we are going to rebuild it. It is not in the traditional earthquake knocking it down, it's the consciousness breakdown. There are certain sacred geometry structures that were damaged during an earthquake in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago that greatly, greatly hindered the ability of the Cabal to do certain types of energetic rituals. So they had to go to alternative sites. So you're going to begin to see earthquakes in the most strangest and unusual areas so that those systems of sacred geometry begin to get deep fractures in them so they cannot be used against our people anymore.
And when you're starting to see these gifts that are enabling us to access what our sun is so beautifully emanating through, the photonic light, that information, that memory, watching all of these things happen, one does, we get questions, will it help my spiritual path if I donate money to these causes? Or how best can I help heal this situation? And that's a question that really gives pause for contemplation, because when one starts to get deeper understandings, one then starts to emanate a knowingness of creating a hologram where these things just don't exist.
Mm-hmm. We have to come into a state of knowingness that completion of the great spiritual tasks is at your hand and foot right now. Whether it's giving money to a cause to satiate something inside yourself or to prove something inside yourself.
Yes.
You are still doing something in the manifest now. And it's the things in the manifest now that will heal our world, our tribe, our nation, our family, our clans, our states, and everything else that's out there. The most important thing you can do in these times is learn to heal yourself, so when it comes time to help to heal others, you have some coping skills and you have some techniques that don't make you a babe in the woods.
And also, for those whose authentic signature frequency is calling this forth, you'll start to realize that you are kind of like a front runner. Things will happen and you'll have experiences and glean understandings from them. And this will happen to those that are practicing more than anything else. It's not going to happen overnight. But those that have been practicing for a while, there are experiences and emanations, sensations that you will be able to find words for or be able to recognize and understand, and then just emanate something, even if it's through your observation and breath. And these skills will help those around you, because you will start to recognize when they're integrating, and you'll start to recognize sometimes blockages or restrictions in the equations or what our sun is projecting, through photonic light into us, the photosynthesis of our spirit, as Andrew says it so eloquently. You'll be able to help them by merely observing and emanating them and helping them through energetically, and sometimes you'll be able to do this without words, or you'll be able to say words. I mean, you've done this so many times, Andrew. Can you give us some examples?
The 4 elements, that's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Calling them to your aid, calling them to the aid of the people that are in the Nepal earthquake, calling the ancestors to help find remedy and resolve for not just yourself, but for thousands of others, to create contemplative equations that you can give to consciousness creations that are waiting for you to give them structure, order, things for them to comprehend, so they can come back to you with a collective way of understanding and finding resolution. But you must make that conscious active choice. Are you doing it recreationally? Are you doing it sacredly, to have a knowingness behind it? We live at a time where we must make this separation of densities, and that comes between the talkers and the doers. And then there are the talkers who do. They do both. We need many millions of those to step forth in the changes that are coming for our world. The talkers and the simultaneous doers. Those are the new elders. Those are the ones that are the wayfinders, the pathfinders, the showers. Those are the ones that come up with the linguistics of how to be.
You know, and this is also an understanding within itself, and one needs to perhaps contemplate this, is that, are you practicing this as a defense? Are you practicing this as a strategy? Are you practicing this as a way of being with an understanding? Or are you practicing it because it's on vogue? Or are you practicing it because
it's brand new
fear that is driving you instead of the excitement of the experience and the journey? The attitude is everything.
Absolutely. Attitude is just a change in consciousness. Whether you're melancholy Molly or a negative Nick. Your attitude determines everything. Every morning you wake up, if you cannot turn on the smile, you are battling this parasympathetic and your own self-created energies that are going to loom over you every morning you wake up until you clear those energies out. For every morning you wake up and you can't remember your dreams, blame the parasympathetic. In a world of no shame, blame, or guilt, we take away blaming the parasympathetic and we begin to counter its abilities. We take away its power and we retask it into something else. Those first 10 minutes of your day are yours and no one else's. The slave system wants that first 10 minutes. It wants you to think what's going to go on in work, what you got to wear, etc., etc., etc. Claim those first 10 minutes back. And then those 20 minutes, those hours after, those are still yours. And if something comes into your field, know that it's you to stop it. It's your dirty energy that you aren't going to share with the next person that calls you on the phone, that's a telemarketer that called you at 8:30 in the morning. Or it just happens to be a friend that calls at a time where you're just upset. Don't pass on the energy. Make a conscious choice to not pass it on, to hold yours in, and to not complete the system of domination and control by stepping on someone else that day with your own energy, because it's in vogue, habit pattern around everyone. You're making that choice about your own energy and going, no.
It's almost like recognizing, when we're talking about that motto, is like Agent Smith. Recognizing when you're being Agent Smithed.
Yeah.
And instead of allowing that to come and you to attack your own kind, recognize it and then cease, desist, pause, stop it. Kind of like what Neo said to the bullets, like, no. I understand that this is a chemical reaction from some kind of a belief system that's been impregnated into me that takes me away from joy, love, and bliss. I understand this, for I'm now understanding what contrast is. I am beginning to remember. I am no longer the forgotten one. I am now the one that is remembering. I am integrating. I am downloading, and I see you. I see you. I recognize you, and therefore I can become the observer. Therefore, I can disentangle and gain from this experience what? The wisdom.
The wisdom of being the unentangled observer, without love, without strings attached.
That's right. Soul integration. Hey, 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 DNA. Let's go dance. And with that, guys,
Namaste.
namaste.